All right, so for anatomy and physiology, this is the second lecture of Unit 2. This is now the integumentary system, aka your skin. All right, so if you remember in the histology lecture when I gave it to you, I went over 3 layers of the skin: epidermis, dermis, and hypodermis / superficial fascia / subcutaneous. That's what's going to go here. So without knowing it, I already went over part of the lecture with you in the last lecture in histology. All right, so first off, you see in your outline, you have to know what an organ is right off the bat. Like we said last time, we have to have two or more different tissue types which are working in a similar fashion to do a similar function, and there has to be a discrete boundary, meaning an ending to it. All right, so with that, you understand that now, since we're going over the integumentary area, this is the first system we're going over in your body. System means now we're going to have different organs working together for a common purpose. Therefore, the integumentary system is not just your skin. It's your skin, it's your oil glands called the sebaceous glands, it's your sweat glands called the sudoriferous glands, it's your ceruminous glands, which are your wax glands. It would then also include things like the hair follicles, the nail beds, nails, and the things that go along with the skin as well too, the nerve endings and everything else. All right, so skin, in case you didn't know, it's one of the larger organs of your body. If you wanted to lose about 15% of your body mass, real simple, let me skin you. When I skin you, you'll lose 15% of your mass. Downside, you'll lose all the functions that the skin provides for you, which are plentiful. You need to know what the skin does for you. Why do we care? As we said before I get into the functions of skin, just to make sure we're all on the same page. So, start off. We left off 3 layers, really. Now, we have the epidermis up here, which you already know is made of stratified squamous epithelium. If it's your skin like this, it's keratinized. If it's in your mouth, your oral cavity, your esophagus going in your trachea, vaginal orifice going up in, that would be then the unkeratinized, which is why it has to stay damp. Below that then, you got the dermis. And below that, then, you have the hypodermis, also known as superficial fascia, also known as subcutaneous. Hypodermis, you already know, is mostly composed of adipose tissue, fat cells. All right, the dermis, we already know, can be split into 2 areas with that imaginary line where the little finger-like projections go up. That is called the papillary region, and that is where there's areolar tissue. This big, thick area down here is called the reticular region of the dermis, and that's made of dense, irregular connective tissue. If you remember, it's the bowl of spaghetti noodles where the collagen fibers are going every which way. All right, so with that, already covered the major parts. I'm going to come back to these in a little bit to start filling them in with more traits, okay, specifically the epidermis. All right, now, why do we study your skin? Why do we care? Many different reasons. Number one, as you know, it is a major thing that's going to regulate your body temperature. Best way to think about it, think about somebody who's experienced a fire, has had third-degree burns over, say, 30, 40, 50% of their body. Think of the traits that they lose. They can't retain their body heat. So number one, it's a protection and regulation against body heat because that fat layer helps to retain your body heat in. You're going to generate anywhere from 75 to 85% of your body heat through your muscle contractions on a daily basis. The muscles are right below the fat layer. The fat layer is non-conductive and therefore holds the temperature in longer so that your enzymes can work a lot better for your metabolism and every other function of your body. So temperature regulation is crucial. Understand it means in your skin then there has to be thermoreceptors. These are going to be sensitive to basically heat. Your body perceives coldness as the absence of heat. So therefore, think about it, if you're working out and you start to get very hot, you look at your arms look more veiny. If you're outside on a cold day, same arm, basically you don't see any veins on it. Well, why? So, vasoconstriction, which means blood vessels leading to the skin. You constrict the blood vessels leading to the skin whenever you experience cold. The whole idea is when I restrict the blood vessels, I retain more of the body heat, you stay warmer. Vasodilation means now they get bigger going toward the skin, which means you're hot, which means let's take the blood closer to the skin, vent off the extra heat, so that therefore you maintain homeostasis. Another major function of skin you already know is protection. Specifically, that's the keratinized area that waterproofs your skin. In your immune system, again, if I ever catch you in immunology with me, the first level of protection of your immune system is your skin. It's part of your innate system. Your skin basically is a very, very inhospitable environment. Number one, the upper 20, 30 layers are dead. Dead cells. Number two, they're gelled together with keratin, so that means it's waterproofed and dry. Coming out of your sebaceous gland, your oil glands, yes, you have oil coming on the surface, which helps to soften the skin. However, also in that sebum, you also have antibiotics, which also kill bacteria and other microbes. So therefore, it's not pleasant. It's dry. It's very, very little bad organic material to digest. You have antibiotics hitting you, plus you're exposed to the sun, UV radiation. It's a very good first barrier. So therefore, to get through that first barrier, it should take quite a bit. Next thing, as you know, your skin is also used in sensation. There's going to be 4 major types of nerve types of sensations, receptors that I'm going to need to hold you liable for as we go through here. So as I go through them, pay special note to what are called Merkel discs, Meissner corpuscles, Pacinian corpuscles, and then you're going to have hair root plexes. Those are the 4 we're going to be hitting on. You need to know where they are, what they do, and how they do their job. Be able to compare and contrast. Along with that then, understand your skin also does pain. It also does texture, vibration, pressure. Now understand something here there, okay? So touch texture would be like, let's say you go into a dark room and you got a feel for the light switch. That's touch texture. If you have change in your pocket and you can feel and you can go, oh, that's a dime, that's a nickel, that's a penny. That's touch texture. Pressure vibration has to occur from sensations which are deeper in your skin. So therefore, it has to be, it's found in a deeper layer. For those, the term for that is called proprioception. Please note, proprioception, P-R-O-P-R-I-O-R-E-C-P-T-I-O-N, proprioception. Next, because I'll come back to that later. Moving on down, your skin also does excretion. What does it excrete? Specifically sweat. Your sweat glands are called your sudiferous glands, S-U-D-I-F-E-R-O-U-S. They secrete sweat, which is mostly water, but in that water you understand there's going to be ammonia waste, there's going to be lactic acid waste that also come out of that as well too. Along with that, it's immunity. It's also a blood reservoir, which is why, let's say somebody is working out or somebody becomes embarrassed and they become flushed. You can tell the blood pools are near the skin and therefore can cause a coloration, specifically if the person is obviously light skin tone. One of the more important things that skin does for you, big, huge star, is it does the first step in vitamin D synthesis. Vitamin D, we'll talk about in the next unit, actually, in chapter for the skeletal system. Vitamin D is a necessary, not necessary, but it's a cofactor that helps in the ossification of your skeleton in order for your osseous tissue to actually get the calcium salts, meaning calcium phosphate, calcium carbonate, to actually harden. If you remember from the last chapter, that's the matrix of bone is the calcium salts, calcium phosphate, calcium carbonate. To do that, vitamin D helps to facilitate and speed that up so that it actually will harden at a faster rate. Vitamin D, if you notice, if you drink milk, the vitamin D milk that you're drinking has been fortified. Why is it fortified? Is because whenever they homogenize the milk to make it basically to the fat doesn't come out of it, because you want to buy milk where you have fat layer and milk, oh, something's wrong. It's not. It just wasn't mixed well. But then they also pasteurize it. Pasteurize is a way to sterilize it without losing the flavor of a material. So when it's pasteurized, it's going to be heated. Well, that's destroying vitamin D. So after they finish that, they put the vitamin D that was present back. So it's been fortified with the vitamin D, which is necessary. So understand, vitamin D synthesis starts in your skin through exposure to UV radiation, and then it will finish up in the liver, and then you'll be able to use it. Skin as a minor function is a social function, because as you understand, you can have nonverbal cues when you smile, when you frown, when you raise one eyebrow. All those are nonverbal forms of communication. And as I also said too, it is going to be a UV barrier. The major protection against UV radiation, you should all know by this time in your education, is melanin. Melanin is going to be created by, what a novel idea, cells in your skin called melanocytes. Melanocytes secrete and make melanin. All right? We're going to find out there's 2 types of melanin called pheo and eumelanin. All right? Be able to distinguish between those. Let's continue on. So with that then, epidermis, already started talking about. Now, if you look through the outline as I'm looking down at it to make sure I make this as expeditiously as possible, you have keratinocytes, melanocytes, Langerhans cells, and Merkel cells. Here we go, epidermis. In the epidermis, the keratinocytes are the majority of the cells. So if you remember when I drew stratified squamous epithelium, like this, okay? There's my epidermis. All these cells are classified generally as stratified squamous epithelium. However, specifically, what are they? The stratified squamous epithelium cells are keratinocytes. Notice the term, a cell that makes keratin. Keratin is a waterproofing agent for your skin. Now, there's going to be several layers to your epidermis. Depends upon whether you have what's called thick skin or thin skin. So I'm going to put thin skin here. I'm going to put thick skin over here. All right? Now, thin skin. Thin skin is what you think of all over your body. Thin skin is only going to have in the epidermis 4 layers. It's the one that has pigmentation. It's the one that has hair follicles. It's the one that's going to have sebaceous glands, oil glands. It's going to have sudoriferous glands, sweat glands. So anywhere on your body where you think, oh, I can have a darker pigmentation, I'm growing hair, ding, ding, that's thin skin. Now, the 4 layers are going to be from the deepest to the most superficial. Stratum basale, stratum spinosum, stratum granulosum, and stratum corneum on the outside. So here we go. Stratum basale, 1 layer of cells right along that hump. Now, thick and thin skin both have a stratum basale. They both have that. What are these? These are the stem cells to replenish dead cells. Basically, you have to understand is when your skin is moving on its way out, it is dying because it's further and further away from the nutrients. Then it gels together and it sloughs off about every 30 days. So roughly this has to go through a cell cycle of about every 28, 30 days to replenish the cells every so often. If your skin becomes injured, cut, well then that's going to speed up. But once it's healed, it slows back down again. All right? But again, roughly 30 days. That procedure is faster when you're younger. As you get older, it gets slower. I'm sure maybe you've held the hand of an elderly person and their skin feels almost like paper thin. Well, that's because this process has slowed down dramatically. So this is called the stratum basale, the bottom one, the basal stratum. Stratum means layer. Above that, you then have the stratum spinosum. Spinosum, and I'm going to make it red, fills in all these little holes. Where these little dips are, look like potholes. Basically just cells that fill in all the holes and make it all level. Now again, thick and thin have a stratum spinosum, the next layer up. Stratum spinosum is usually the thickest layer of the skin, specifically if it's thin skin. If it's thick skin, it's going to be the cornea. Next layer up is going to be called the stratum granulosum. Granulosum is about 2 to 3 cell layers thick and it looks grainy, hence why granulosum. So therefore it looks like a bunch of little specks. And again, both thick and thin have this. This is now where we start to get a difference, okay? In thin then, from here on out, you have layer upon layer. It looks just like sheets of paper of dead tissue. That is called the stratum corneum. It has been keratinized and it's been waterproofed, okay? Over here on thick skin, we don't have that yet. Directly above the stratum granulosum, there's a little thin layer which is pretty much see-through. It's called the stratum lucidum. Lucidum means lucid, see-through, so basically it's colorless. Then thick skin has layers of corneum. However, these layers of corneum are many, many, many times thicker. Okay? That's what makes it thick skin. Now, thin skin, as I said, has hair, has pigmentation, oil glands, sweat glands. Great. Thick skin. Thick skin, no pigmentation. No oil glands, no hair. Only places of your body where you're going to have them are going to be areas which are called glabrous skin, G-L-A-B-R-O-U-S. Glabrous means hairless. Palms of your hands, plantar, soles of your feet, plantar. Those are thick skin areas. And as you can tell, the thick skin areas, specifically if you people don't take care of their feet and they get those big yellow thick calluses on there, that's just the stratum corneum piled up, but it needs to be shaved down. That's all it is. But again, they're designed, but keep in mind, both areas are going to have sweat glands. You know your palms sweat, your feet sweat. Just the thick skin is missing the oil gland, the sebaceous, it's missing the pigmentation, and it's missing the hair. And also it has a new layer, the stratum lucidum, and the corneum is like triple thick on this case. All right? Now, You have to be able to tell between thick and thin skin. You have to be able to give me the layers in order. I don't care how you memorize it. If you want to memorize it from the outside in, inside out, know the layers, know what's going on in the layers. Again, from the bottom, it's basale, spinosum, granulosum. If it's thick skin, lucidum, and then corneum. Okay? Now, with that, we come on down then. Now understand, all those cells I was pointing to, those are all keratinocytes. They make keratin. We're going to go over keratinization in just a bit. Now, you see down there melanocytes. Melanocytes specifically in thin skin, because remember, thick skin doesn't have pigmentation. Along the stratum basale, every so often you will get a darkened cell. Every so often. That's a melanocyte. What do melanocytes do? They make melanin. Well, how the cells become protected against UV radiation. Assuming you're not an albino, you do create melanin of one type or another, or both. Most people make both. It's called eumelanin and pheomelanin. That's why your skin has a specific tone to it, a color to it. As you get more exposure to UV radiation, your melanocytes produce more melanin, more melanocytes. Well, once the melanocyte becomes ripe, the keratinocyte next to it will phagocytize it. It will swallow it, take the melanin, and basically use the melanin to make a sun umbrella kind of over the nucleus. So basically, if I had this keratinocyte here, and I had this melanocyte here, this keratinocyte would engulf this melanocyte, take the melanin, and reconfigure it like a sun umbrella just over top the nucleus. Because again, I don't need melanin all the way around, I just need it where the UV is coming to protect. What does the melanin do? It absorbs the UV and protects any sort of harmful mutations to the DNA in the nucleus. Cancer. All right, but that's in the stratum basale. So in the stratum basale, you have your stem cells, you have your melanocytes. You're also going to have letter D you see on your list called a Merkel disc, a Merkel cell. First nerve receptor we need to talk about. With a microscope, they're too small. You can't see them. These are very tiny nerve endings in the stratum basale. What do they sense? Big star, really, really, really light touch. Imagine you walk outside, you close your eyes, and you can barely feel the breeze coming across your face. That's a Merkel disc doing that for you, okay? But it's only found in the stratum basale. Langerhans cells you see there are found between the spinosum and the granulosum, and basically they're part of your immune system. They're basically like a border guard, checking out that area for the first things that break the fence, which is your skin, to come into your immune system. They are also what are called antigen-presenting cells. They will engulf whatever materials are and present the proteins on the surface to start inducing cell-mediated immunity for your immune system. But again, take me for immunology, you learn all about that, not for right here and now. All right, so popping on down then. If you notice, I've already gone over the cell types. I've gone over the Merkel cells, thick versus thin, and I've gone over the 4 to 5 layers of epidermis. All that you're liable for. Next thing you got to worry about is what is called keratinization. You got to be able to walk through the stages of keratinization. Real simple. You have keratohyalin granules, then it becomes eledin, then becomes keratin. Now think, what was the grainy layer? Stratum granulosum. Well, the stratum granulosum is what contains the keratohyalin granules. That's why it looks grainy. What now happens is these cells will apoptose, they get covered up with a fat layer, and they start to then elongate and stretch. When that happens, they become eledin. Eledin is a colorless solution, which is why you see it in the stratum lucidum. Now understand, in thin skin, there is eledin, but there's not a distinct layer for you to see it. In thick skin, you can see the 3 stages of keratinization. The granulosum has the keratohyalin granules. Eledin is going to be found in the stratum lucidum, and then the stratum corneum is when you become waterproof. That's all keratin, keratinized, with a K, K-E-R-A-T-I-N. Now, so know those 3 steps, know where they occur. Now, that ends the epidermis. Now we move into the dermis. Dermis we already talked about. Dermis has a papillary region and a reticular region. Papillary region, areolar connective tissue. The reticular region has dense irregular connective tissue, collagen. Plus it also has other bells and whistles. This is the area that you will find the hair follicles, sebaceous glands, sweat glands, all the goodies are down here. Okay, very few things are found up in here because again, lack of blood flow in a lot of cases. Now, however, the papillary region is important. Why? Because again, it does have areolar tissue. However, it's also going to have our second nerve receptor that we need to worry about. If you look in certain areas of your skin, the papillary region, now note, only in the papillary region, what you'll get are these kind of funky, ovular, weird, kind of like out of focus fingerprint areas. But it's only found in the papillary region. Location, 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 okay? That's your landmark. That is called a Meissner corpuscle. Meissner corpuscles are what respond to texture. They also respond to what you would consider to be your sense of touch, would be Meissner. If you were blind and reading Braille, that's a Meissner corpuscle. If you were then, like I said, going in your pocket and go, oh, that's a dime, that's a penny, that's a quarter, without ever seeing it, that's a Meissner corpuscle. You're walking in your room, it's dark, you can't find the light switch, you're feeling the wall. That's a Meissner corpuscle. And so Merkel is in the stratum basale, very, very, very light touch. The Meissner corpuscle is going to be found in the papillary region of the dermis, and this is where you get things like the feeling of touch and texture from that one. Okay. Notice not proprioception. That's further down. Okay. Next, then we're going to be in the reticular layer down here. Okay. So the reticular area, again, dense regular connective tissue. Dense irregular connective, not irregular. Ooh, sorry. Now, with that. As I mentioned, I already went over what stretch marks were before, but you have these collagen fibers in here. If you overstretch it, they will then polymerize in these parallel strands, parallel to the point of where it was stretched, making stretch marks. As we said before, collagen is white, so therefore stretch marks look white because you're looking at the collagen in the lower dermis. Now, with that then, also down in here, in the lower dermis, going also into the hypodermis. Now, depending on the textbook you read, some textbooks will consider the dermis as one layer, the hypodermis as another layer. Other textbooks will take the dermis and hypodermis and make it one layer. Me, I'm old school, they're separate layers. I believe your textbook makes them all one layer. So they'll call this lower part the lower dermis and the fat cells the lower dermis. Same thing. Now understand, on canvas, for thick skin, thin skin, for the Meissner corpuscle, everything I'm drawing up here, I put the histology for it on canvas as well, so you can see what it looks like for real. Okay. Now, Pacinian corpuscles are enormous. Pacinian corpuscles are down here in the lower dermis and also in the fat layer. Take this Meissner corpuscle and make it huge. This is the one that kind of looks like rings of a tree. Okay. Now, how it works is how your bathroom scale works. If you step on your bathroom scale, you understand there's a metal spring inside of it. Whenever you're not on it, it's all coil tight, which means no pressure on it. When you step on it, you make that coil spread out. Depending how much weight you put on it, how much pressure the coil comes out, reads on how much the weight was. Now imagine, if you're pressing down your skin a little bit, that's like a coil, but it's a coil of protein. It would space out a little bit, and your body would go, oh, that's a little pressure. If somebody squeezes harder, it spreads out farther. More pressure. So therefore, the Pacinian corpuscle, the biggest one, the one found lowest down, this is the one that's going to respond to proprioception, which is going to be pressure and vibration. Okay? So, Merkel, stratum basale, very, very light touch. Meissner is in the papillary region of the dermis, sense of touch, texture. Pacinian corpuscle, huge, all the way down, that's going to be proprioception, which is going to be vibration and pressure. Only other one we have left to talk about would be for the hair root bulb plexus, which I have to go over hair first. All right. Now, with that, next thing you see on the list is skin color. Please note star bedazzle, how your skin gets its color. There are three things that give it color: melanin, carotene with a C, not a K, and then also hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a very low player in the game, and it's only very useful if you're fair-skinned. This is, again, when somebody looks flushed or blushed, that's blood pools of hemoglobin under the skin. The two most important ones would be melanin, hands down the most important, and carotene, C-A-R-O-T-E-N-E. Melanin. Melanin is the main thing that protects you against UV radiation made by the melanocytes. There is eumelanin, E-U, and pheomelanin, P-H-E-O. Eumelanin is the one that people think of that's the best one. EU means true melanin. This is the one that's just the best thing against UV protection. It's basically, its pigment is a brownish to a black color. Some people say, oh, look, when I'm out in the sun, I became darker, I tanned. That's eumelanin. Pheomelanin is kind of like a reddish, orange, yellow color. People that are more fair-skinned, maybe they don't tan, they freckle. They're tan, basically, they make one big body freckle, and that's their tan. It's not really tan, but that's pheomelanin. Pheomelanin tries to protect you against UV radiation, but quite frankly, it sucks. But it does its best, okay? So basically, if you freckle and you're fair-skinned, the best thing against, the sun is a really big hat, clothes, and sunblock, factor 3,000. That would be the best thing for you. But anyway, know the difference. Eumelanin is a black-brown. Phthalo is kind of a reddish-yellow. Orangey almost. Carotene. Carotene is a light yellow pigment that you find in adipose tissue, in your fat cells. Also, you find it in the stratum corneum, which is if you look at the palms of your hands, soles of your feet, they don't have pigment, but they have kind of like a yellowish tint to them. That's, again, because of the carotene in it. If you ever watched the movie Fight Club, and they had the big bag of fat, it has a yellow tint to it. That wasn't real, but that's what it looks like. Okay, so moving on down, then you see abnormal colors. As far as abnormal colors, that's nothing I would put on a test for you. It's more FYI. I don't know where you're going to end up in life. You may be working for a dermatologist. I don't know, but you want adjectives about somebody's skin color. If somebody is cyanotic, the skin color is a blue tint. Why? Usually due to lack of oxygen. Erythema means a redness. That could be due to flushed. Blushing could also be due to a bruise, something along those lines, a burn. Pallor means white. Pallor means that the blood is pulled away from the skin, and therefore what you're seeing are the collagen fibers, which are white. So they look, quote, white as a ghost type of thing. When somebody is dead, they kind of have, it's called pallid. Why? Because the blood's been drained out, and therefore they lose that, I guess you would call it, more healthy look to their skin. Albinism, that one you should know. Big star from Gen Bio. Albinism is the inability to produce sufficient amounts of melanin, which means that there's a range. You understand a continuum. Full-scale albinism means the skin is white, the hair is white, eyelashes, eyebrows are white, and the colored part of your eye, the iris, doesn't have any pigmentation. It looks red. Why does it look red? Because you're seeing the blood vessels in the person's eye. Their eyes aren't red. You're seeing their blood vessels. So they're like poster children out in the wild for things like skin cancer, all sorts of eye problems. So therefore, that's that one. Jaundice, again, means your skin is yellow. Why? Because your liver isn't actually destroying or removing bilirubin from your skin. When your red blood cells go to die, they die in your spleen. They release a chemical called bilirubin into your blood. That bilirubin then should be absorbed and passed through the liver and then removed, and therefore it takes that yellow pigment out. If the liver is damaged, then you would get yellow skin. It becomes worse when you see yellow palms, yellow soles of your feet. When the conjuncta of the eye turns yellow, that is a red flag of liver shutdown. Bronzing is called Addison's disease. Addison's disease is a problem of the inefficiency of making a glucocorticoid steroid hormone from the adrenal glands perched on top of your kidney. One of the symptoms of it is that you always look tan. There's lots of other problems that go with it, but that's just the one for skin. A hematoma is a technical way to say a boo-boo, a bruise, a black and blue mark. That's a hematoma. It's a blood pool underneath your skin. Now, epidermal ridges. Epidermal ridges, as you know, are going to be your skin is designed to basically fold, refold, stretch, and hopefully not tear. As you understand, you have what are called flexion lines. Flexion lines, big star, are folds in your skin. So when you smile, you have these wrinkles. When you curl your forehead, you have wrinkles. Your elbow has these wrinkles. They're basically designed for stretch areas. Another way of flexion lines, think of the palm of your hand, your love line, your lifeline, all that. Those are called flexion lines. That's so when you can take your palm and you can reduce it, then you can stretch it way out, and you don't rip the skin in your palm. Okay. Now, a freckle. Freckle, mole, and hemangioma. Understand the three. Freckle basically is a flat, melanized patch of skin. It can be done either through genetically, through heredity, or it could be through overexposure to the sun and the environment. But freckles, understand, usually don't have hairs coming out of them, but it's a flat, melanized patch. A mole is something different. A mole is an elevated patch of skin, which is melanized, usually associated with a hair. I always think, you think Austin Powers 3, moly, you know, that's what you think of. Hemangioma. Hemangioma are what are collectively called, what you would call a birthmark. People always think freckles and moles are, no, a birthmark is something else. Hemangiomas are basically, they're tumors of blood vessels in the skin. However, they're non-cancerous. So they don't harm you, but they give you a color to the skin. There's capillary and there's cavernous. Capillary is a temporary one. Basically, they call those ones, quote, stork bites, meaning like a kid was brought by the stork bit it, and he got like a red mark from the stork bite. In other words, capillary should fade as time goes on. However, when we talk about cavernous do not fade. They're permanent. Those are called port wine stains. If you don't know what port wine is, it's a really, really, really dark red wine that you always see like on mattress commercials when they're jumping, if it spills and it stains everything dark red. Well, imagine that was on your skin and therefore would cause a dark red that would not go away. In both cases, though, understand they are benign. All right, so following along then, we now come to hair. You're about to learn more about a hair than you ever cared for in your natural life. All right, so here we go. All righty, let's come back to shell. Not meow, but shell. Meow, not shell. I'm getting tired, yes. All right, so hair, when you look at it, has a shaft that comes down and it kind of looks like a little bud at the end and it comes back up. Okay? So, when we look at this, there's going to be a couple different layers to it. All right? Obviously, the whole thing, a hair technically is called a pillis. That's Latin for hair. Plural is pilli, P-I-L-L-I. But it's just a hair follicle. Now, the hair itself is going to have the shaft. This down here is called the hair bulb. Okay? The hair bulb is going to be the area, was the only part where you know, hopefully, that has the actively dividing cells. You understand the hair is basically keratinized skin, same thing that makes up your nails. Doesn't have any nerve endings, because if you cut your hair, you're not like, it doesn't hurt. It's just, there's nothing there, okay? Because it's dead. The only part that's going to be alive is this area down here, right? In that little crook right there, that little horseshoe. That is going to be called the hair matrix, and that's what has actively dividing hairs, and as they divide, they push the hair out longer and longer, okay? Now, the hair itself, keep in mind, it's going to have a couple different areas. It's going to have a medullary area. Medullary means middle. It's going to have a cortex, which surrounds the medulla, and then it's going to have an outside cuticle surface. Let's handle this in turn, okay? So here's my hair. I'm just going to get rid of the shaft around it right now. Okay? There's my hair. The outside layer of it right here is going to have these ridges, which look like this. Now, those areas right there are going to be basically the cuticle, the outer cuticle of the hair. Notice the ridges are pointing downward. Why? Does the hair wish to be pulled out? No. So therefore, as you try to pull the hair out, it causes a resistance to try to pull it out. Okay? Actually, my bad. I have them backwards. It's like this. I have them the wrong way. That's how they look. So when you pull, the ridges fold down and it's harder to pull out. Unimportant either way. Now, the more important areas are the medulla and then the cortex. The medulla, I'm going to put in red. It's the middle. Okay. And then the cortex is this area around it. Okay? So the dashed area is the cortex. The red area is the medulla or medullary area. If I were to take the hair follicle and cut it straight across, what would it look like? A donut. Okay? The medulla would be here. The cortex would be here. Okay? Now, the cortex is usually the area that if the hair has pigmentation, which is going to have pigmentation, melanin in it. Again, depending upon what type of melanin is found, it depends upon what color your hair is. The medulla, its shape of it, is going to tell you the hair texture. Is it straight? Is it wavy? Is it curly? What is it? But that's going to be done by the medulla. I'll cover that in just a minute. Now, moving on down then, in your outline, we have what's called vellus and terminal, and also known as coarse hair. You have to know the difference between vellus and coarse or terminal hair. Real simple. Vellus doesn't have pigmentation. Coarse hair or terminal hair has pigmentation. Vellus is not going to have a medulla. Coarse hair, terminal hair, has a medulla. Think, when you were a newborn, when you ever saw a kid prior to adolescence, prior to puberty, okay? Think of a kid, a baby. When you see the baby, it's going to have hair. It's going to have coarse hair. Usually, if it's not albino, it's going to have color in its eyebrows, color in its eyelashes, and if the little kid has hair on its head, hair on its head. But then all the other hair on its body, its arms, is this little fine, like downy hair that doesn't have any pigment. That's vellus. Once you hit puberty, that changes. If you're a female, thankfully, the majority of it stays vellus, where you don't get this pigmentation, you take on the feminine features, and you don't look like a shaved monkey. If you're a boy, unfortunately, only 1/10 of that stays without having pigmentation. In the night, the hair fairy shows up, starts planting crops all over your body, and then all of a sudden, you become more or less a shaved monkey. So, And women laugh, ha ha ha, yeah, shaved monkey, but look it. A lot of you think us men are cute, so what does that say about you? You like shaved monkeys, all right? So, hey, I don't want to hear it, okay? So, there we go. So, but be able to tell between vellus and coarse, okay? So understand, everybody has coarse or terminal hair at birth. Your eyebrows, your eyelashes are going to be coarse. If you had hair on your head, it would be coarse too. The rest of it's vellus. After puberty, it depends. If you're a female, majority of it stays vellus. If you're a male, the hair fairy comes at night, planting crops as he goes along, okay? Or she goes along. All right, now, moving on down, then you see another term called lanugo. Lanugo is a very fine, downy fur covering, like a peach fuzz on a newborn. This is only found when the baby's in utero. Why? Because understand, the baby's going to be in an amniotic fluid. And think about when your skin gets wet and you rub it against something, what would happen? It would crack, it would bleed. You want to prevent that. So what does the lanugo do? It prevents abrasions, things like that. So when you see a brand new newborn, you'll get this like weird like peach fuzz over it. Like, oh, the baby's all furry. Understand, that's not permanent. That's going to fall out within the first 2 weeks, be replaced by vellus. That's what's going to happen. Glabrous skin, I already told you, means hairless skin. The only hairless skin in your body. Palmer and plantar. Alopecia is the fancy way to say you're losing your hair. Hirsutism is the opposite. That's excessive hairiness. This is like if you ever saw like a Barnum and Bailey like poster from the early 1900s, and they would have Jojo the dog-faced boy, this poor man who's like looks like a werewolf pretty much. That's hirsutism. Basically, he has a tumor of his hair follicles where the hair follicle, the hair bulb divides so quickly that maybe he would shave, then back in 2 days, 3 days, he's back to where he was. It's just excessive hairiness. Okay, it's a genetic defect more or less. Now, coming on down, hair texture, hair color, big star. Hair texture. If I took a hair and did it in cross section, how can I tell the hair texture? Hair texture is done by the medulla. If it's a circle and round, the hair is straight. If it's an oval, it's going to be wavy. If it's flattened, that would make it a tight curl or kinky hair. So, that would be straight. That would be wavy. And if I flatten it more, make it almost touching each other, that would be tight curl kinky. Okay? Now, color of the hair. Color of the hair depends upon what melanin, if any, is found in the cortex. So color of the hair is done by pigmentation of the cortex. So follow. If the person has black or brown hair, what would the melanin be? The brown one, eumelanin, right. If the person's a redhead, what would they have? Pheomelanin, right, because it's reddish yellow like I just said. What if they're blonde? It's a combination of both. They have both pheomelanin and eumelanin. Depending upon the ratio of what they have, that's where you got everything from light blonde to dirty blonde and everything in between. Depends upon the ratio of what you got. Other thing about blonde people you always hear, they're often called bubbleheads, meaning, oh, they're stupid. There's actually an anatomical thing for that. In the cortex, you can actually find trapped gas bubbles in the cortex. So there's actually bubbles in the hair. They actually have bubble head. What does that mean? If you ever saw somebody that's a true blonde, their hair looks sometimes almost like it's unhealthy, almost like it's straw-like. Well, that's because the fragility is put into it because there's gas bubbles trapped in it. It's not solid, and therefore it makes it more brittle. Gray hair means that now understand, for black, red, and blonde hair, you have melanin in it. For gray hair, there's no melanin in the cortex at all. Also, for black, brown, red, and blonde hair, you're going to have a medulla. For gray hair, the medulla is dead. There are no cells in it. So basically, the hair almost becomes like a dead straw, pretty much, with no pigment to it. All right? Coming to the end of the anatomy of this then, we then go into the glands. We have the sebaceous glands, the erector pili, and the hair root plexus. Let's see here. So, let's then talk about hair root plexus. There's your hair bulb. The last nerve ending we got to worry about. There's going to be a network of nerves that just sort of surround the hair bulb itself. That is called a hair root plexus. Plexus means network, okay? Why do we care about a hair root plexus? That's if somebody's behind you, you don't know behind you, and they move one hair, or they touch a hair, or they pull a hair. That's what's tripping it, is this hair root plexus. That's basically knowing that the hair is being manipulated, okay? Now, other things. erector pili, or piloerector muscles, big star. Coming near the hair follicle, you will see a stream of smooth muscle tissue, stained red, coming toward it. Now, number one, notice that erector pili, piloerector muscles, are made of smooth muscle. Number two, erector pili. Pili means hair. Erect means pull up. The erector pili are what give you goosebumps, makes your hair stand up whenever you are cold or frightened. It's an autonomic part of your system and basically pulls on it, okay? So you can't control it. So therefore, understand that the piloerector muscles are made of smooth muscle. They attach to the hair follicle, and when stimulated, unconsciously, they'll pull the hair up erect. Okay? Next, we go into the glands. There's sebaceous, there's sudiferous, and ceruminous. Okay, sebaceous is an oil gland. Sudiferous is a sweat gland. Ceruminous is a wax gland. All right, so sebaceous. Let me come back here. Somewhere near the hair follicle, there's going to be kind of like this bag coming off the side of it. Almost looks kind of like a weird hornet's nest coming off of it. What you would see are these large cells in them, and they'd all be uninucleated. That would be a sebaceous gland. If you see that, a hair follicle has to be somewhere nearby. What's a sebaceous gland do? It is an organ. It secretes sebum. Sebum is oil. What does that oil do? It makes the hair soft, pliable. It also helps to waterproof because it is oil. It also gives off a mild antibiotic to kill bacteria in the area. When somebody has, say, skin problems, what happens? Basically, the follicle, when it comes out, you understand, is a pore where the hair comes out. Well, dead skin plus oil creates wax, cerumen. So when you don't clean the dead skin off your face, the oil with it will meld with it, almost makes it kind of like a clay ball, and the clay ball will basically fill the pore in, like a plug, and stop it. Does the sebaceous gland know that it's plugged? No. It still keeps making more and more and more oil. Think, the pressure starts to build, then you get your whitehead. If it starts to go into other tissues, it's a zit, so on and so forth. Okay? All you got to do is simply get rid of the plug, and the oil flows freely again. Okay? That's sebaceous gland. Next one, let's see. Next one is sudiferous glands. Sudiferous glands, S-U-D-I-F-E-R-O-U-S, are sweat glands. There are two types. Note the two types. There are eccrine, E-C-C-R-I-N-E, and apocrine, A-P-O-C-R-I-N-E. Eccrine glands you have since birth. Eccrine glands are what you normally call sweat glands, okay? So normally eccrine glands are found, and basically down here it's kind of like a knot of tissue, and then you have this tube that goes straight up to the surface. So eccrine glands are smaller. They empty out directly to the skin surface. Those are the true, quote, sweat glands. So when you perspire, when you work out, whenever you do it, that's what's coming out of you. Sweat, you understand, is mostly made of water. It has lactic acid in it. It has urea in it. Small amount of salts there in it as well, too, but mostly water to cool you off. But on eccrine gland, again, they terminate out there. Now, people think, oh, when I'm hot, basically it's like a faucet. I just leak. No. There are cells, like little donuts, going all around this little tube, and they're called merocrine cells. And literally what they do is when you become hot, they stimulate, and they help to literally pump the water out onto your skin. Okay? So, continuing on, if it's an apocrine gland, apocrine, A-P-O, they are much larger. They form later on in life in puberty. Where do they form? In your axillary and your inguinal areas. So think of where you start to grow pubic hair. When you hit puberty, on your underarm hair and your pubic hair. That's where they form. Now, apocrine glands are larger. They don't terminate at the surface. Apocrine glands are bigger, and they'll terminate at a nearby hair follicle instead. What they then do is give off their sebum, which also has a lot of fatty acids in it. This explains why your armpits will stink. Because understand, you're giving off a lot of fatty acids and sugars into that area. Well, what do bacteria eat? Fatty acids and sugars. And therefore, if you don't clean out that area, the bacteria break it down. They create a stench. They make it like a smell. Fine. Now, with that, apocrine glands, also big star, give off something called a pheromone. Pheromones are your sex hormones. It's when I'm in class, I go, it's the bone chicky chicky wah wah hormones. Like, the come hither thing, okay? You can meet somebody, be like, oh my God, I can't stand that person. But there's something about them. That's the pheromone. It's a subconscious scent that you pick up that you seem to hit your attractive centers of your brain. And therefore, you're attracted to that individual. All right. With that then, we talked about sudiferous. Now, ceruminous glands, keep in mind, are wax glands, and they occur in your auditory canal. Remember what cerumen is? It's a combination of sebum, oil, plus dead skin. What's it there for? It's there basically to waterproof your ear canal, so when water's in there, it doesn't stay trapped and impair your hearing at all. That's the only place where you would have that, though. Okay, ceruminous is ceruminous. Making sure. Okay, cool. Now understand also, too, I don't go into it here, but mammary glands are actually modified apocrine sweat glands. Just so happens when mommy gives birth, they can be modified to actually create, with lactoferrin, they make lactose milk to feed the offspring. Now, nails, you understand, are made of the same protein as the hair. It's keratin. Now, you learn more about a hair than you cared to. We're going to learn more about a nail than you ever cared to. You like that, you look at it, all right? You look at your own thumb, all right? So there's your thumb. Shut up, Morgan. That's my daughter, Morgan, laughing in the back because, you know, she sucks at artistry, too.
I do not.
Hush, child. All right. So, there's your... That's actually pretty damn good.
Okay, now it's good. Before you drew the nail, it was bad.
You're just... Shut up. You're just running the camera, all right? All right, so what we got here, then, is your nail, okay? The part that sticks out that you scratch with, that's called the free edge, okay? This area right here is called the nail fold. That's where they come in contact on the side where you think, oh, you got a hangnail type of thing, you got to pull it out. This right here is the nail body. That's what you paint, maybe. Down here, then, it's what you would call your cuticle. That is called the eponychium, E-P-O-N-Y-C-H-I-U-M. But if you look at your nail, it kind of has this weird, like, little half-moon white area. That is called a lunule, N-U-N-U-L-E. So, like I'm telling you, learning more about a nail than you ever cared to. Now, in your last picture of histology for skin, take this same picture, hold it on its side. This is what it will look like. Okay, that's the bottom of your finger. Notice, I'm just trying to show you areas, okay? This right here, that's your eponychium, that's your cuticle. That's an important little dividing line right there, okay? Anything where your nail is from that point back, that is called your nail root, okay? Anything that's found from this point forward, that's still part of your finger, is your nail bed. Think if you ever drop something heavy on your foot, the nail falls off, and what you get left there, that's the nail bed. The nail root is still alive, that's why your nail grows back. There's your free edge right there, okay? Now, again, one form of torture you understand is to pull the nails out by the roots. Why? Because kind of like the hair, they have a nerve plexus back here, and that's where the pain comes from for that. All right. Last thing then for integumentary, we talked about how skin works when it's healthy, when it's unperturbed. Last parts of it are what could go wrong to your skin, how can it repair itself. So notice the next thing you see is homeostasis in the skin, wound healing. So you have superficial epidermal wounds and you have deep wounds. Superficial epidermal wounds are real simple, okay? Understand how they fix and stepwise how they do it. All right, so back here. In a superficial epidermal wound, all you did is, let's say you went walking through a forest, there was a thorn bush, and you got a red mark on your skin. No blood. Just a red mark. Just like a scratch type of thing, but no blood. What you did was this. You basically made a wedge in your epidermis. The reason why there was no blood is you didn't go down to the dermis because that's where the blood vessels are. So to fix this, what would happen? Well, the stratum basale cells would detach. The basale cells would line up along the side of where you lost your cells. They would divide, and like filling in a pothole, they would fill in and then take care of that superficial wound. No big deal. Think about it. When you get a red mark or a scratch on your skin, how long does it take to go away? Maybe a day, maybe 2 days. Poof, gone. However, now you're cutting carrots and you're not paying attention. You go, oh, that wasn't a carrot. Some choice words come out of your mouth. What you did is a far better job. What you did now is something like this, okay? Because you draw blood, which meant you had to go in the dermis to do that. Now, you can go all the way down to bone if you want to, but the deeper you go, understand the more damage you cause. When that happens, now you get blood, and now you've also introduced your immune system into this scenario because you've now let the outside world inside, okay? Now, what has to happen? Notice there are 4 steps. First step you see there is called the inflammatory phase. That's right when you go, you start to bleed. What now happens, assuming you're not a hemophiliac, as blood comes into the area, again, swelling starts to occur and therefore cordons off the area. So histamine is released and therefore makes basically like a police tape around it that only now immune cells can come in and out. Nothing else can come in and out, cordons it off. At the same time then, your platelets enter and they start shooting fibrinogen, pieces of protein, across the surface. How does this work? You've cut your finger before, cut something before. Think about it. When you first cut it, bleeds, 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 bleeds. If you're not a hemophiliac, you wait long enough, what happens? It slows. It slows. Stops. What's happening? When you first cut it, there are no fibrinogen fibers present. As they enter and they start shooting fibrinogen, they start making a matrix, a fishnet across it. Well, as the fishnet is still wide, you still bleed. But then as you make more and more fibrinogen, the mesh gets tighter and tighter and tighter till eventually no more blood. Now, is that a permanent fix? No, because I'm sure you all know once you stop bleeding, you go, I wonder if it's healed. You push and it starts bleeding again. That's because the fibrinogen is a very weak protein. It's only holding it together with basically, paper clips and a prayer is what it's holding it together with. You need something stronger to come in to fix it. Remember, the stronger fiber is collagen. That's what we want to show up next to actually make it permanent. Okay, so in the inflammatory phase, your blood clots, epithelial cells will migrate to the area, you get vasodilation, blood fills the area, histamine swells off the area, cordons it off, and then the platelets hopefully then start to make you clot, and you will eventually clot. Fibroblasts also show up because the fibroblasts will start synthesizing collagen, just start making it more permanent, stronger. Next stage is called a migratory phase. So we have the inflammatory phase, that's until you clot. The migratory phase, you see there, is then whenever the fibroblasts show up and they start making collagen. When you do this, if you were to pick the scab off prematurely, you would see that underneath the skin, underneath the scab, it was kind of like this weird pinkish white tissue. Well, that's collagen. It's trying to make a permanent patch. And usually when you do it too early, it starts to bleed all over again because it didn't finish making the permanent patch. At that time, the fibroblast starts shooting collagen across, and the tissue starts to look very grainy. That's called granulation tissue. We're going from a temporary patch to a permanent patch. Next, you enter in the proliferative phase, which is the same thing as the previous phase, but just ramped up to just really try to heal underneath the scab. Once you hit the maturation phase, the scab will fall off, and then you notice you have this scar tissue underneath. During this time period then, your body will start to go through reconstruction, deconstruction of that tissue to eventually try to bring it back to normal skin again. Now understand, the deeper you made the cut, the wider it is, the longer it's going to take for that scar to eventually become, quote, normal skin again. Think about on your body, guys, when you have scars. Do your scars have pigment? No. Do they have hair? No. Do they have sweat glands? Do they have oil glands? No. What is it? It's a patch. Your body said, oh, this bag that surrounds you has torn. It may tear somewhere else, but I'm going to make this patch really thick. It ain't going to tear hair again. And that's what happens. And it takes time to then reconstruct that to become normal skin again for thin skin. All right, so sunburn, hopefully, as we know, then we go into burns. There are classically 3 degrees of burns. First, second, and third degree burns. Please know what they are and what happens. First degree burn means that basically you damaged only the epidermis. This is like when you get a redness on it. If you see somebody who has a red sunburn without blistering, that's a first degree burn, okay? It hurts, you get some minor skin damage, but again, it tends to fix itself fairly quickly. Second degree burn means you killed the epidermis and you've done a partial destruction of the dermis further down. Hallmark sign of a second degree burn, blistering. Blistering usually means it's a, quote, scald. It's a scald burn, like boiling water on your hands. So if you see blisters, that is a hallmark sign of a second degree burn. Then you're going to get everything from discoloration of tissue, pain. It's going to take longer to heal. Third degree burn means now you've done a really good job. Epidermis, bye-bye. Dermis, bye-bye. And you've gone further and further down. There are cases where you technically get what's called a fourth degree burn, which means you basically burn it all the way down to the bone. How you take care of that is amputation. There's nothing you can do about it because the tissue's dead. Third degree burn now, that's called a full thickness burn, which means that you've taken out the entire integumentary area, and that's now where you get massive scarring, and if it's a long part of the body, you're going to have skin grafts. Basically taking healthy areas of skin which are growing and like sod, putting them in the damaged areas and having them spread out like sod in your lawn. Now, last thing you have to know for integumentary is, because you're in Florida, which is, this is the poster child for skin cancer. You have to know the three basic types, the most common forms of skin cancer, specifically that we see in Florida, and also the ABCDs of what we call skin cancer. In other words, how to assess the damage or potential skin cancers. Right. So there's basal cell carcinoma, squamous cell carcinoma, and malignant melanoma. The last one is the one that's the oogie boogie one. Now, basal cell carcinoma means now that the stratum basale cells have become erroneous and dividing. Therefore, people usually feel on their skin maybe like a little bump. Maybe if they get a sunburn, you see like a little white area, like a nodule on their skin. That's a hallmark sign that could be a basal cell carcinoma. However, it's the most common one you have. Fatality really doesn't, because people usually get checked out. Dermatologist usually cuts it out on an outpatient. They'll freeze it or cut it out and basically just remove it. Squamous cell carcinoma means now that the stratum spinosum is now having erroneous cells. This one is a little more problematic because usually what you get is the equivalent of like a canker sore. Think of like a volcano where you have buildup on the side and then you have the crater, the caldera in it. That's what forms on your skin. Again, people will see that and go, this isn't normal, and they'll go get it checked out and get it fixed. Normally where you see squamous cell carcinoma the most is where your skin is the thinnest. Think like on the top part of your ear. If you have a man or a woman who's lost her hair or his hair and they're bald, that's thinner skin up there. They might get it on those areas as well. But again, it's a concave, ulcer. But because it's a concave ulcer, it's usually not lethal. But people will say that's not right, and they get it fixed. Malignant melanoma is now where the melanocytes will divide uncontrollably. This is like where you have the classic thing where the mole starts to grow, big, bleed, change color, that type of thing. But again, as long as it's caught, it's only lethal in about 5% of cases. It's usually defection in a gene called BRAF, B-R-A-F. Now, to assess then, based more or less malignant melanomas, they do what's called the ABCDs of cancer. A stands for asymmetry. Think, on your body, if you have any moles tend to be an oval or circular. In other words, they're symmetric. If, however, all of a sudden this mole starts to grow erroneously, all of a sudden on one side it starts to look bigger than on the other side, that means that cells are dividing faster on this side than on this side. That creates asymmetry. That's a red flag. B stands for border. Usually around a mole, it's nice and smooth. If the border starts to become scalloped, that means red flag. These cells are dividing too quick. That's a red flag then of that as well too. C is color. Color means that, moles are normally kind of like a brownish, maybe a reddish color. If the mole changes color dramatically, if it starts to bleed, man, red flag, red flag, red flag. The biggest thing is D, diameter. Diameter, basically, if the mole is 6 millimeters in diameter or over, usually a dermatologist will go, it might be cancerous, it might not be cancerous. Because it's so big, we should remove it now anyway, because if it's not going to be cancerous, it will be eventually. And therefore, that's usually one of the hallmark signs they use. With that, we finished Unit 1, Unit 2, I should say, which is then histology and integumentary. See you in Unit 3 for skeletal.